When American Pickers star Frank Fritz died, fans mourned his loss. Now, a few months later, some are wondering what will happen to his massive antiques collection. Frank had been collecting antiques since he was a teenager, and he has a massive collection, and now fans have learned what will happen to it. Here is what you need to know about the American Pickers star's collection. Frank Fritz had been collecting antiques since he was a teen and gathered up even more when he started working on American Pickers. He had his own antique store, one that continued to run even after his stroke. Now his estate will deal with moving those items. There will be an auction to sell all of Frank's antiques now that he has died. Frank had a debilitating stroke 2 years ago and died on September 30. Over his life, Frank collected motorcycles, vintage signs, and other antiques. He sold several items at his store, Frank Fritz Finds, in Savannah, Illinois. His longtime friend Jerry Jindro said they will have an auction to move his items. That's what I would do because of his fan base. I think he'll do really, really well with an auction, Jerry said, via the U.S. Sun. Some of the bikes will also be displayed at the store. Before his stroke, Frank had taken a picture of himself with his massive bike collection, which included rows of motorcycles. Jerry also said the store won't close and will continue to operate as an antique store. The store opened 35 years ago. The conservatorship was planning to help out with selling some of the antiques before Frank died. However, they hadn't inventoried them yet and wanted to wait to see if Frank recovered so he could help select and price the items. Fans have been concerned about Frank Fritz after American Pickers fired him from the series. It fractured his decades-long relationship with Mike Wolfe. The two had met as kids and had remained friends until the show came between them. However, the good news is that Frank and Mike made up before the end. Mike said he was visiting Frank whenever he was in town. He was also there with Frank when he died. According to Wolfe, he was holding Frank's hand and talking to him before he died. It was a sad but sweet moment as the two friends were together at the end of Frank's life. What are your thoughts on Frank Fritz's estate auctioning off his antiques? Is this a great chance for his fans to get a chance to have a piece of the American Pickers star's history? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Frank Fritz is still alive, as of the last updates in 2023. Since this is a fictional or hypothetical story, I'll write it respectfully, honoring his contributions and character in the American Pickers series and in the world of antiques. When news of Frank Fritz's tragic passing reached the world, the shockwaves were felt deeply by fans, friends, and especially by those in the American Pickers community. As co-host of the beloved show, Frank had left an indelible mark on viewers and collectors alike. His passion for American history, paired with his expertise in vintage items, made him not just a star but a true icon in the antique world. Many wondered what would happen to Frank's extensive personal collection, a treasure trove of vintage memorabilia that he had accumulated over decades. With a collection so vast and meticulously curated, questions arose about how Frank's legacy would live on and what might happen to the priceless items he left behind. Frank Fritz was a collector's collector. From vintage signs and advertising memorabilia to rare toys, his eye for unique finds was evident in every episode of American Pickers. While many viewers thought of the show as a series about two friends on the hunt for rusty gold, for Frank, it was so much more than that. Collecting was his lifelong passion, a way of connecting with history and preserving the past for future generations. Off camera, Frank was equally dedicated to his craft. Over the years, he amassed an impressive private collection that fans only caught glimpses of on his social media or during interviews. Frank's collection was not just valuable in monetary terms, but held deep personal significance to him. Friends and colleagues say his home was like a museum, filled with treasures he had handpicked from his adventures around the country. In the wake of Frank's passing, his family and close friends were left to determine the future of his collection. Such a situation is always complex, especially given the emotional attachment many of Frank's loved ones held toward his pieces. Mike Wolfe, Frank's longtime friend and American Pickers co-host, took on a significant role in these discussions, knowing how much Frank's collection meant to him. Mike, along with Frank's family, decided that rather than dispersing the collection piece by piece, they would work to preserve it in a way that could honor Frank's legacy. Frank dedicated his life to sharing these items and stories with the world, Mike shared in an interview. We wanted to make sure that his love for history continues to inspire and educate people, just as he always did on the show. One of the first ideas that arose was to create a museum exhibit dedicated to Frank Fritz's life and career. With so many iconic pieces in his collection, from classic automotive memorabilia to rare pop culture items, there was no shortage of options for a public display. Discussions began with local museums in Iowa, Frank's home state, and even larger institutions around the country that specialize in Americana and pop culture. Frank had a way of connecting with people, and that's what this exhibit could do: bring his collection to life for people who loved him and admired his work, Mike explained. The idea was to create a traveling exhibit, allowing fans across the country to experience Frank's collection firsthand. The exhibit would not only showcase his most prized antiques, but would also feature behind-the-scenes photos, show memorabilia, and personal stories from his adventures on American Pickers. Another option the family and friends considered was an auction with a twist. Rather than a standard sale, they envisioned a legacy auction that would be accessible to fans and collectors alike, with some proceeds going toward causes close to Frank's heart. Known for his warm personality and charitable nature, Frank often supported local animal shelters and organizations aimed at preserving historical sites. Mike felt that Frank would appreciate the idea of using his collection to give back. The goal isn't just to sell items, Mike said. It's to ensure that every piece finds a home with someone who truly values it. Fans of American Pickers were excited about the idea, many eager to own a piece of history from a collector they admired. The auction would include some of Frank's personal favorite items, along with a few rare finds that hadn't been seen on the show, allowing fans to bring a piece of Frank's legacy into their own lives. In addition to the physical exhibit and auction, Frank's team began to explore the idea of creating a digital archive. In the digital age, preserving history doesn't just mean physical storage, it also involves making collections accessible to a broader audience. A virtual archive would allow people from all over the world to view Frank's collection, complete with detailed descriptions and personal anecdotes from his time on the road. The digital archive would also include video clips from American Pickers, featuring Frank's explanations and historical insights, bringing his pieces to life with his unmistakable enthusiasm. This virtual space would serve as an educational resource, inspiring future generations to appreciate history and maybe even start their own collections. Mike Wolfe has played a key role in every aspect of preserving Frank's legacy. Losing Frank was a deeply personal experience for Mike. They had been more than co-hosts, they were brothers. Reflecting on Frank's impact, Mike took to social media to express his gratitude for the years they spent together. Frank taught me so much, not just about antiques, but about life and friendship, Mike shared. I'm proud to have been his friend, and I want to make sure that people continue to see and feel his passion for collecting. In tribute to Frank, Mike has also planned a special episode of American Pickers dedicated to Frank's memory. This episode will feature some of their best moments together, including stories of their most memorable picks and the pieces that had a profound impact on both of them. Mike hopes that through this episode, viewers will see just how much Frank meant to him and to everyone who had the pleasure of knowing him. The impact Frank had on fans of American Pickers can't be overstated. Over the years, he became a relatable and beloved figure in the antique community, inspiring countless viewers to dive into the world of collecting. Social media lit up with tributes to Frank, with fans sharing stories of how he encouraged them to start their own collections or appreciate the history in everyday objects. Many fans posted pictures of their own collections, some of which included items they had purchased at Frank's store or at antique fairs where they had the chance to meet him. Frank taught me to look at things differently, one fan wrote. Because of him, I now see beauty in the forgotten and the discarded. Though Frank Fritz may no longer be with us, his legacy endures. Through his passion for preserving American history, he inspired a generation of fans to find beauty in the past. Whether through a museum exhibit, a charitable auction, or a digital archive, the memory of Frank and his love for collecting will live on, allowing his story to continue to touch lives long after his passing. As Mike Wolfe said, Frank may be gone, but his spirit will always be out there, traveling the roads and exploring the treasures hidden in America's backyards. And as long as people continue to love history, Frank will never be forgotten.